for you. So this morning is talking a little bit about clean language, but within the context of coaching supervision. And rather than me tell you things that I already know and you don't know, I thought we would start with things that you know, and then I can help you fill in any questions that you may have. So we're going to start with this question. When you're supervising at your best, you're like what? And I'm going to invite anyone who's got an answer to that to say a few words. And then I'll start asking you some clean questions, one or two questions to find out a bit more about what's going on for you. And we'll get an array of responses, and then we'll stop and I'll be saying to you, okay, so what am I doing? What is this clean thing? What are you noticing about what I'm up to? So you can be spotting things that Marian is doing. We'll make a flip chart about that. And then there'll be an opportunity for you to go away in a small group and practice with the same question. You can deepen your answers if you've answered in the main group, or you can start from scratch if you haven't. And then we'll come back, answer more questions. It will be very interactive. I don't have any agenda apart from this question. And so I'm open to answering anything that anybody would like to know, and hope we're going to have a lovely time together. So when you're supervising at your best, you're like what? And if you've got something, you can just raise your hand like that, or you can press the raise your hand thing in Zoom, and I'll try and keep my eye on what's going on. When you're supervising at your best, you're like what? What do you like? Oh, I can see an answer from Damien in the chat. So you're like a river flowing, Damien. What kind of river are you? So I'm going to get you to answer out loud, not just in the chat. What kind of river are you, Damien?
I was thinking a really peaceful river, like Rio de la Plata, where I am from.
A peaceful river on a... Say that again.
Like the Rio de la Plata is the river where from my home city.
Oh, okay, the river from your home city. And is there anything else about that river?
Very calm.
Very calm.
It's very wide.
So Damien's like a river, calm, like the river from his home city when he's supervising at his best. And I saw someone else, Vimla, is telling me like a mirror. Where's Vimla?
Hi.
Oh, there you are, Vimla. So what kind of mirror are you?
Actually, I'm a mirror that can see myself as well.
So you're a mirror and you can see yourself. So whereabouts is that mirror when you're a mirror and you can see yourself?
I'm not sure I'm following the question, but it's like my client can see themselves in me, but they don't know that. So I have to also see myself and tell them.
So the client can see themselves in you. They don't know. So you have to see yourself in order to tell them.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. And then we have Michelle, like a detective. What kind of detective, Michelle?
Well, like Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Anything else about Sherlock Holmes when you're like Sherlock Holmes?
Well, the hat.
And
the fact that he has is that Dr. Watson with him? Yeah. It's like a supervisor of supervisor.
Oh, okay. So he's got Dr. Watson, the supervisor of the supervisor.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Michelle. And then we've got Jean. Can't say the name. Where?
Jean-Elvire?
I am here.
Where? There you are. So you're a reflecting mirror.
Yes.
Is there anything else about that mirror when you're a reflecting mirror?
Well, because what I'm putting in the space is coming back to me and I'm reflecting back.
So what you're putting in the space is reflecting back.
Yeah.
And
it's
is there
coming
anything
back to
else
me.
about anything else about the reflecting of that mirror?
But I'm getting information about what's going on because it's playing in the space.
And then what happens when you get that information?
Well, I'm supposed to get a better understanding of what's going on, and then I can offer it to my clients or my supervisee, etc.
Okay, so you get a better understanding and then you offer it to them from the reflecting. Lovely. And Judy, where's Judy? There's Judy.
Here.
Looking all around the screen. Judy. Still haven't located you. There you are. Thank you. So you're like a river, but different from Damien's. Mine is more about the current and how it dances and touches, explores and flows all around the objects in the riverbed and the riverbanks. So what kind of dancing and touching is that you're doing?
Well, that's similar to, it could also be the wind under wings, right? That airplanes or birds are utilizing, right? It's the currents and the flows and how the objects that it's moving around or that are moving on it and it interact. Like it is shaped by the things in its path, and it also shapes the things in its path. There's just this relationship between, and there's movement. And stillness, because there's eddies, there's places where we like pause behind a rock and form an eddy, and then we might get out into the current again and go. So
eddies and movement and stillness, and it's that kind of river. Thank you very much. So Eva, where's Eva? Wave at me, Eva. Thank you.
Hi.
So you're free when you're supervising at your best. You're free.
Yep.
What kind of free is that free?
Free of expectations, free of judgment. That's in my contract with clients. We agree to leave judgment and self-judgment out of the conversation and notice if and when it creeps in.
So judgment and self-judgment are left out of the conversation. That's in the contract. And so when you're free like what?
No strings. It's really best metaphor may be when skydiving.
Skydiving. Free like a skydiver. Fabulous. And then Jane, we'll just take this one from Jane and then we'll find out what people are noticing about these clean questions. So fully embodied. Where's Jane? Wave at me, Jane. There you are. Thank you. Anything else about that fully embodied?
I am supervising with all of me, tuned into all of me, the feeling, the sensing, just fully present.
Fully present, like this, and tuned into all of me. And when you're fully present and tuned in like that, then what happens?
Then just each moment that shows up is what is. And there's just this natural flow with
natural flow.
In the space that we share.
Everything that shows up, there's just a natural flow in the space that we share. So we've got lots of metaphors. We've got the free as the skydiver. We've got fully embodied. We've got the two rivers, two mirrors, and a detective, Sherlock Holmes. So what are you noticing about what I'm doing? What am I up to?
I noticed you're using the same, it's Courtney, hi everyone. I noticed you're using the exact same language.
Yeah, I'm
They have
doing that.
shared.
So I'm using the same language. Let's put this up on the chart here. So same language, same words. Okay. Anything else you're noticing? Linda.
You're helping us deepening the metaphor that we offer you.
We're deepening the metaphor. Any more things that I'm doing?
You're using their words and then asking a question for them to expand on what that word means.
Their word plus a question, and then they expand on the word. Lovely. That's a great summary of what we're up to. Anyone notice the questions? Anyone get hold of any of the questions that I was asking? Richard.
I was curious. It seemed like the first question was an exploration question, and then the second question you asked was one that took things further. So the first question was like, is there anything else? What kind of? And then the follow-on question was, then what happens? Or when you're X, you are X like what? To help sort of deepen the exploration.
Yeah, you could say I was doing that. The actual the kind of rules of clean language mean that you can ask any question in any order. There's no actual order, but in this context, kind of makes more sense to ask a more general question followed by a then what happens, or that's like what, and somebody got a where question. But you don't have to do it like that. Silvana, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, that it was a semantic clarification, and then you went a little bit more into the psychological association of the action related to the semantic association that was mentioned first.
Well, that makes me sound really clever. I wasn't really. Yeah, I certainly may have been doing that, but
right.
what I was actually doing was this one, where I was listening, choosing a word, asking a question, and then the person expands on the word, and then I ask another question. But yeah, it'd be great to think I was actually doing what you. Yes. Any other ideas about what I was up to? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the questions that I was asking up on this board. So we had what kind of, we have, is there anything else about? And where, whereabouts? And we had, that's like what? And we had, then what happened? That's 5 questions, which is plenty. Not just plenty for now, but actually I do most of my work with those 5 questions. So that those 5 questions account for probably about 80% of every clean session that I do. So you can do almost all of your work with just those 5. And of course, you might say, wow, how come the client isn't saying, well, how come you're asking people the same question over and over? But they check, the question changes because of what's in these little dots that I've put here. Their words makes the question different every time. So it's not the same, it's different. And they don't actually notice. So the rules of clean language are actually very, very simple. all you're going to do is ask us what we call a starter question. So today our starter question is, when you're supervising at your best, you're like what? And that is what creates a bit of content, some ideas for people. And then when somebody responds, you just ask one of these questions, listen, and then respond and listen again for as many times as you want to. We're just going to do a little bit here. When you want to use clean language for a whole coaching session or a whole supervision session, you probably need a little bit more than that in terms of how on earth do you choose what to ask about and how do you choose which question. But when it's just a short amount of time, like we're going to do this afternoon, you can just experiment with asking a question and seeing what happens. As long as everybody's up for that, that's what we're going to do. So let's give it a go. Somebody offer us an answer to, when you're supervising at your best, you're like what? Somebody else that hasn't had a go yet. When you're supervising at your best, you're like what? And you're going to answer, and then I'm going to pause you and get the group to think of some questions. So who'd be willing to share there? When you're supervising at your best, you're like what? Thank you, Christy. Thank you. So when you're supervising at your best, you're like what?
Like a dancer.
Dancer. Okay. So we've got one word, so it makes it very easy. We can ask any one of these 5 questions. We're probably not going to ask that one because she's already told us a metaphor, and that one is to invite a metaphor. And we're probably not going to ask that one straight away. We're just going to deepen first, a bit like Richard said. We're going to explore a bit first. So who'd like to ask, Christy, a question, one of these 3, and just put the word dancer in the blank. Off you go then, Courtney.
What kind of dancer?
A ballroom dancer.
So she's a dancer. She's a ballroom dancer. Let's have somebody else ask a question. Just come in with a question.
Is there anything else about being a ballroom dancer?
I think of being a ballroom dancer as being in connection with the other person.
Whereabouts are you dancing?
Well, maybe because of the nature of this conversation, I feel like I'm dancing on a stage with a lot of people looking at me. But I think when I'm in flow, it's I don't even know what's around, because when I'm in my best supervision, I'm so focused on the connection between me and the other person that it doesn't really matter what's around me.
Christy, when it doesn't matter what's around you, what happens?
We can move together with ease.
That will do. That's lovely. Thank you. So we just ask a few questions, and it helps Christy to deepen and know more about her metaphor for when she's supervising at her best. So, are there any questions that you have about what we've done so far?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question. About the first question, can we expand on the questions? Like, for example, what kind of ballroom dance are you dancing?
Yes, yeah, you can. Well, you've got to hold 2 things in mind. One is, does your question make logical sense? So it does make logical sense. If she's ballroom dancing, she must be dancing a ballroom dance. So it makes logical sense to ask that question. So that's the first thing, is does it fit with what's going on? And the second one is, what's the purpose of how will knowing that ballroom dance help this person or help you? And if you can justify it in some way, then you can ask it. So if you think, well, actually, if she knew what ballroom dance she was dancing, then she might have more information about how she's interacting with her client, then great. And or you might be just curious about it. Maybe if you were using clean questions, because you can use it for coaching, you can use it for supervision, you can also just use it for research. If you wanted to know about the steps of the dance, then that would be up to you to find that out. You can be curious about these things. The main thing is it has to fit the logic of what's going on. Yes. Okay, any other questions?
So the starter question was asking for a metaphor. Are there other types of starter questions that can be used?
Yes, there are. So this one is asking for a metaphor. And just by the by, it doesn't matter whether the person answers with a metaphor or not. Because somebody's already said here, I'm going to be completely open and non-judgmental, and that's part of what clean is. So we're inviting a metaphor with that question, but if somebody doesn't give one, we just use whatever they say. So that's part of it. But also for a coaching session, the starter question is, what would you like to have happen? What would you like to have happen? The person responds and then we go off. So I'll put that one on there at the bottom here. And so this is the most common. That's the most
we
common.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't see beyond then what happens.
Sorry.
There you go. Thank you.
Move it back a bit. Good. There we go. Just fit it in there. So commonly we ask, what would you like to have happen? Or if we're doing a little group thing or a research thing or a training activity, we probably start with a like what question, but you can put any content in the like what question. We often ask trainees in training programs, when you're learning at your best, you're like what? I'm doing some research for a project and I'm asking people, your relationship with your belongings is like what? You can ask about any content that you like. Depends on the context. Any other questions? Because I'm going to get you off into groups in a moment and get you to have a little go with each other.
Is that a kind of check-in? I don't see the connection with the supervision question.
You don't see the connection of what with the supervision question?
Of what is done there?
Okay, so what I'm up to this afternoon is showing you how you can use clean questions. And given that everyone here is a supervisor, I thought it'd be a great idea for you to learn a little bit more about the way you supervise. And so we're using the questions for that purpose this afternoon. But if you were doing supervision, then you might start with this one. So what would you like to have happen? The person says what they've brought to supervision, and then you would unpack that with the clean questions. Is that answering your question, Michelle?
Super, yes.
Great. Okay. Sorry if I didn't make that clear before.
No problem.
All right. So we're going to send you off for, let's think, 6 minutes in a group of 3. And you're going to start with the question when you're supervising at your best. You're like, what? Someone in your group will respond, and then you can ask 2 or 3 clean questions from this list. And then when you done that, you're going to move around the next person and the next person. If you've already answered the questions, you can either generate a new metaphor, or you can just answer more questions about the one you already have. And then you're going to come back. We're going to find what new questions you've got. Now you've had a go yourself. And then we'll add a little bit more in before we'll probably add quite a bit more in before we finish. So, Lily, have you got some groups ready for us?
I do. Everyone's in groups of 3. There's one group of 4. How much time are we putting on this one?
We're going to put just 6 minutes. I think that's
6
enough
minutes.
time.
All right. So I'm opening the rooms now. 6 minutes.
We've got the report. Lovely. So how did that go? How did you get on?
Great.
Okay. Questions or sharing that you'd like to do? Eva.
So several times I felt like asking, and that blah, blah, blah feels like what?
Okay.
And it wasn't on your list, but
yes, it was. Yes, but
I wanted to go in the feeling. That's the question.
Yeah. Well, the thing is you can. I mean, it sort of depends. There's a little bit of a risk of that question. That's like what? Because you don't want too many metaphors. And so ideally, you're kind of working with one big metaphor that holds all the information together. That's the reason that we're working with metaphor is because it is quick access to the unconscious mind. And ideally, it would just be one metaphor that is fully explored rather than lots of little ones, because that is more difficult to hold together. So it kind of depends. If when you ask the first like what question, did the person give you a metaphor, like we've got Christy's dancer, and then we can help her explore that whole thing about the dancer, and you can ask lots of questions and sort of accept what she says and extend it and extend it. If you ask if she'd have said I'm connected, and then you say connected like what, and she says, well, I'm connected like a telegraph pole. Now you've got a dancer and a telegraph pole, and if a bit later she says something else and you ask that's like what, you end up with lots of metaphors.
Sorry, Marian, that's not what I meant. There was a metaphor, and I wanted to go into the feeling. So I was wanting to go into what does it feel like to be in a warm place, or the physical experience or the emotional experience, the feeling. That was where I wanted to go to with the question.
Okay, so with that's not quite clean. And the reason is because the clean questions, what's happened with those based on the person who originated them, who was called David Grove. His idea was to take out as many of his own assumptions and his own biases as he possibly could, and make it so that the person who's answering the question is as free to answer in their own way as they can be. So obviously the questions contain some words, but they are very, very minimal questions, so that the other person is free to go, oh, it's this and it's this. If they use the word feel, if they say, I feel warm, then that word feel then becomes available for you to ask about. Okay. So you can say, what kind of feel warm is that? Is there anything else about that feel warm? If they just say it's warm, then you have to think, okay, to me, that sounds like they feel warm, but they didn't say feel. So I'll hold back from saying feel and just say, what you could say, whereabouts is that warm? And they probably say, oh, it's in my heart or in my body. And now you've got access to feeling. But if they say, oh, it's out there, it's a heater, you're like, oh, okay, good job I didn't ask them about the feeling then. So the looking, the seeing, the feeling, the hearing, all those senses are not part of the clean questions. And in a minute, I am going to introduce something that sort of does bring a little bit of that in, because sometimes knowing the metaphor is really great, and other times you want to know what that refers to. What's the real life experience? So how can you get both? So we'll talk about that in a moment, but that I want to ask the feel, that's kind of your stuff, Eva, and then you have to hold it in a little bit and ask them about their stuff. That's what being clean is about. Yeah.
Marian, can I follow on with another related question?
Sure. Yes.
So if wanting to understand the model better, so there's would, instead of using like feel or think or whatever language, would there be an almost how do you experience the dance? I mean, would that be open enough, or is that also bringing in an assumption that it's the experience that's important?
We don't have how would you experience it, but you can. One of the great things about, there's some really lots of great things about clean language, and one of them is this freedom, but there's also you as the practitioner and what you're up to. So if what you're up to is helping people to find out about their experience, then that question you can import it in, because David was not precious about this work. So, and Lily was telling me when you were all off in your breakout rooms that she intersperses clean questions in her coaching and supervision sessions. So it's not like every single question is clean, but you can think, oh, that was a bit of a metaphor. I'll ask a couple of questions about that. Or I'll ask these clean questions for this reason. So you can jumble it up. What we have, or what we tend to do in our, when we're working with people, is we will ask them, is like what? And then we might ask them, is there anything else? And what kind of? And maybe a where or whereabouts. And we get a bit of a flavour for that metaphor. And then we might say something like, so what are you seeing or hearing? Or what are you saying or doing? So we're going to the experience by going to the senses. So when you're being a dancer like that, what are you seeing or hearing as you dance? Or what are you saying or doing? Well, obviously they're dancing, but so you have to kind of make the question fit. So we've got these, we call them evidence-based questions, so that get back from the metaphor to real life. So that's the kind of thing I think you can ask, but I don't think there's anything wrong with experience as a word. What we're trying to do is keep the words that we introduced as neutral as possible. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So,
could you bring your flip chart a bit closer? I think I lost something there. Thank you very much.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah. Thank you.
A little bit wobbly.
Thanks. That's perfect. Thank you.
And can I check a question with you, Marian? An opening question.
Yes.
It would be, what would you like? Find an object in your space that captures how you feel about beginning coaching. If I were supervising a new coach, for example,
yes.
Would that be like choosing a metaphor?
Yeah, that might be like a nice way to start. That would be like in replacement for a starting question. And if we were being really clean, we would just take the word feel out of it.
Oh.
So we would say, find an object that represents how coaching is for you right now. Because not everyone is sort of in touch with their feelings. So they might have a different mode that they prefer to be in. Like I'm very, very visual. If you ask, I'm doing this art course and I went to an art gallery with a teacher and she's like, which picture do you like? And I'm like, I like that one. So why? So, well, I like the contrast on it. How does it make you feel? I'm like, no, it doesn't make me feel anything. I like the contrast. It's all about the visual for me rather than feelings. Whereas for a lot of people, the art is about the feelings.
So that's like a leading question.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, you can start with an object. That's a very nice way of starting. And then, what questions that go with that might be something like, so what are you noticing about the object? What's happening now? And then what happens when you look at that object? Just thinking, how can you keep your questions minimal and not introducing your own ideas and metaphors through the questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Courtney.
Yeah. Hey, Marian. Thank you so much for this. It's great. I'm just finding I'm a little bit still unclear about the whereabouts question and where we're trying to go there.
Okay. So where is a way of sometimes it's a way of accessing a metaphor. So in this exercise, we're asking that's like what, which is a direct invitation to metaphor. And but sometimes if you're working with someone in a supervision or a coaching context and they have a feeling, say, like people do, and they say, oh, I don't feel, well, not I don't feel, I feel a bit anxious about something. So there's a kind of, I think it's pretty okay to say, actually, that anxious must have a place. It must exist somewhere. It's not in the air, it's in the person's body usually. So then we would say, so where is that anxious? What kind of anxious? Where is it? And then if they say, oh, it's in my chest and my heart is palpitating, we can say, that's in your chest and your heart is palpitating, like what? And they go, oh, it's like a little bird trying to get out. So it's a way in to having metaphors for things that are located. And then the other way round, the metaphor that someone has, and we asked Christy about where is the dancer. She said, oh, it doesn't matter where it is because I'm so focused on the person. But for some people, the spatial aspect of it is quite important. And what we've found, David found, and then we've all found over the years, is that space is quite good at holding information. So if somebody's got, I don't know, a bird in the sky, well, whereabouts in the sky? And the more located things are, then the more information they can get for themselves about what's going on for them. It seems to be very important.
Okay.
And yeah, and following on from clean language, David Grove invented another thing called clean space. And in that methodology, it is basically sending people to different spaces and finding out what they know in a different space. And it's amazing that people, they go in the corner of a room and they say things like, oh, I feel quite boxed in here. And that aspect of their thing that they're working on gets a bit of attention. And then they move to the window and it's like, oh no, I can see for miles now. And somehow different actual locations make a difference to people. And this is the same with these metaphors as well. The location of them kind of is holding the structure and the information that's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I'm really hearing there really strongly is that taking away the where do you feel that, where do you see that? You just say where is that? So there's no, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we're not going to have time for you to have another little practice because we've only got 9 minutes left. But so let's ask you this question. So I haven't given you any ideas about how you can use this in supervision. What I'm kind of trusting is that you can think of that for yourself. But let's hear from you. You've got a few questions, you've got a few ideas. How can you use these in your own supervision or your coaching? Jane is nodding. I'm going to ask Jane.
I'm actually bouncing on a ball.
Oh, okay. I thought you.
No, but I am supervising in a coaching program this evening.
Okay.
And I'm going to invite, they're just starting their coaching now. So I wanted to ask them to find an object, but taking the how do you feel? I am such a feeling person that I just put that on everything that I do. So that's a great awareness.
Okay.
Where is very helpful. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so you're going to introduce the where question instead of the feeling question.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, who's got a different idea about how you can use these ideas? Christy.
Yeah, Marian, I'm really appreciating when a metaphor is brought up by a client, being able to use these type of questioning to go deeper with the metaphor.
Yeah, and can you imagine yourself doing that?
I can. I'm also reading Lisa DeHart's book about metaphors right now, The Science of Coaching Metaphors. And so it's really combining a lot of connections in my brain.
Yeah, so just, something comes up. I think the first question I tend to ask is what kind of? So if they say, oh, it's like a bird or whatever, what kind of bird? Anything else? Where is it? Just simple questions to get more of that experience available to them. Any other applications?
I can see it in exploration, for instance, of eyes 3 and 4 in the 7-eyed model when they start describing the client. And then we want to understand what's their relationship with the client and how they bringing a metaphor is always very useful, and then how they experience it.
Yeah. So a great question for that then, Eva, would be, your relationship with your client is like what? Yep. And then get a metaphor and ask a few questions.
Yeah.
It would be great. Any other ideas? You're very quiet now.
But I like that. I'm calling it a two-step for lack of anything else to think of. When you ask the opening question, when you're at your best, what do you like? When you're at your best doing whatever, what do you like? And then if you don't get a metaphor there, you get an explanation. Then that second question of, and that's like what? Which sounds like another invitation for a metaphor that maybe some people are just not as good as coming up with a metaphor.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is to make it okay. It's perfectly okay to not have a metaphor, because just in the same way as some people don't have a feeling, and some people are not going to have a metaphor, and not to try and force them to have a metaphor, because that would be us putting our ideas on them as well. So the whole thing is that the client is king, and whatever their modality is, we as the coach or the supervisor have to do the adjusting. So we're like, okay, this person, they haven't got any metaphors. I'm going to work with them conceptually today. Or, this person doesn't do feelings. We're going to go into visual. So whatever's happening, you're the one who adjusts rather than it being your preferences all the time. Yeah. Great. Anything else before we
yeah. I wanted to ask, exactly about that, about an example in which you don't bring a metaphor, because so far it brought the linguistic concept of the sentence, right? What kind, how, and all the prepositional phrases. But but how does it work when there is no metaphor and you go through the what kind, in which way, how, blah blah?
It kind of works the same. Because it's very difficult for people to speak without any metaphors at all. So even the conceptual words have a sort of metaphorical underpinning, a metaphorical kind of background. I mean, if you just take words like background, that's got a spatial element to it, and underpinning's got a different spatial element. So even words that sound like they're not metaphors directly, are metaphorical quite often. And so just asking questions of those words and helping people to explore is very useful even in its own right. I was talking with James Lawley a couple of weeks ago, who is kind of my trainer, and he was talking about how if you just ask clean questions, you will get a lot of there's a lot of power in just staying clean and offering people this choice of they can go where they like. If you go into the metaphor, then it will be even more powerful. And then if you do something else, which we haven't talked about today, which is you help those metaphors to become psychoactive, where the person is like they are living in their metaphor right now, then even more. But just a few sprinkling of clean questions is going to reveal things that perhaps other questions don't get to because of the freedom that people have to answer them. So it's not very different. It's just that you're asking it of different content. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really helps, a lot in the multicultural environments that we're all working, because metaphors are different depending on the cultures and the languages. So that would help clarify at least the meaning before moving on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And allow it to be their metaphor rather than you have to translate it into what you think they mean. Yes. Lovely. Okay. So Lily, I think you said you had a couple of things to finish. I think you've been putting them in the chat. Do you want to say some stuff?
Yes, thank you, Marian. And, I worked with Marian about 12 years ago when I was thinking about going back into my business after being in a large organization. And it was really powerful because I had this image she asked me about, that's like what? And I had this image of me being this runner, and I was at the start line and I was ready to run. The pistol goes off. I start running and I noticed there's a rope around my waist. So it became, what was that rope that was holding me back? And that was a huge unblocker for me. So I'm forever grateful for that session, Marian.
Oh, you're so welcome.
So thank you for coming and sharing with us again today. March the 17th, we have Tatiana Bashkarova coming to speak with us, same time, same room. And then April is our 8th annual conference. Some of you will be presenting there. So hope to see everyone there. Thank you so much, everybody.
I just wanted to let you know, if anyone's interested in learning more about clean language, then my website is cleanlearning.co.uk, and Lily's holding up my book just there.
The great book.
Clean Approaches for Coaches.
As you can tell, it's well used.
Yeah. And I'd be very happy to talk to anybody that wants to know any more. I think I'll just put my email in here, and then if anybody does, you can just get in touch.
That would be great, Marian. Thank you for that. So we'll see you all in March. Thank you for coming and participating.